Welcome to the Fulfillment Game. Here we have meaningful conversations with extraordinary professionals, exploring life, work, and their personal wisdom in a context grounded in spirituality and contribution. I'm your host, Amit. Today we have Paulette Rigo. Paulette is the founder of Better Divorce Academy, the #1 best-selling author of Better Divorce Blueprint. Paulette wears multiple hats. She's a certified alternative dispute resolution mediator, and she guides couples who want a resolution without the courtroom. She's a certified divorce coach, empowering clients through every legal, financial, and emotional stage of divorce. Her work spans 43 states in the United States and multiple countries. Paulette is the director of Divorce Right Inc. She helps organizations minimize the personal and professional impact of divorce on their employees. Paulette's clients save huge legal fees and time and emotional cost from divorce. More importantly, because Paulette is a well-trained yoga expert, the entire process becomes a holistically harmonious journey from which one can walk away wiser, stronger, and more ready for what lies next. So stay tuned for this really interesting conversation. Paulette, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here. I'm honored for the gracious invitation and to be able to spread some value and knowledge to your listenership. Happy to be here.
Paulette, tell us about yourself. Tell us your story. How did this brilliant career in an expert, an America's foremost expert in divorce, come to be this person that you are today, making such a difference to so many lives?
It's a journey that I didn't anticipate by any means. I was a young girl growing up in metropolitan Boston area in Massachusetts in the United States. My father was a bit of an intellectual. My mother was an artist, a dancer, choreographer, costume designer. So I had a very different upbringing with my father was all about grades and academia and college and career. And he liked to have fun too. And my mother was all about fashion and music and theater and art. And so I never was that little girl that kind of made a decision about what I wanted to do when I grew up. On one hand, I knew I needed to go to school because that's what my father wanted me to do. And my mother wanted me to grow up in a ballet studio. And she was very happy if I didn't go to college and became a teacher, a choreographer, a dancer like she was. So by the time I was 18, I kind of had to serve two masters, as they say, and went to college for journalism, worked in TV, radio, media, got a degree in mass communication and journalism, went to Northeastern University, got my bachelor's at the school at Northeastern University. But I also grew up in a ballet studio from age 3 to 18. I danced 4 or 5 days a week and had my hair in a bun and wore a tutu and it's a very disciplined world. But the theatrical world can also be a little bit, the show must go on, never let them see you sweat, be a trooper. It's just a blister, you'll be fine. It was a little bit of wearing a mask, like the show must go on. When you're on stage, they don't care that you have a blister on your heel. You're just there to perform and entertain. So I learned to be malleable based on who I was with, which in some ways is very good. It makes you a chameleon. It makes you adaptable, right? But on the other hand, it makes you not really know who you are because you're always trying to read the room and behave, not fake or falsely on purpose, but really just to, look at the room and read the temperature, read the energy of the room. If I was in an academic setting or a business corporate environment, I would feel one way. And if I was on stage or had to teach or choreograph, or I was in the classroom or I was in the dance studio classroom, you had to behave a different way. By the time I was young, I just didn't really know who I was as a person, as a young woman. And I'm also a junior. So that can make things a little bit even more complex because when you're named, particularly as a young girl, with you have the same name as your mother, the same middle name as your mother, the same last name as your mother, and then you have this third little title like second or JR after it, you feel a little bit like a shadow, like a, as I was called, I was like my right arm. My mother had a, she would always say, "You're my right arm." And I never knew what that meant, but meaning like she could always rely on me. I was dependable. I was loyal. I was trustworthy. And I could read her mind. I kind of knew what she needed and anticipate the needs of people as a young child. That dynamic also came across as my parents weren't particularly congruent personality wise too.
Mm.
My mother was much more of an introvert at home, but an extrovert in public. And my father was always an extrovert. He was just always the life of the party, shall we say. Yeah, that's how I got to not really have a strong identification or persona about what I wanted to be when I grew up, mindset, and got good grades, went to college, graduated cum laude, did fine academically. But I met my first husband when I was 17. We started dating. I had just turned 17, as a matter of fact. I was a senior in high school because my birthday's in August. So back in the day, that was customary. So I graduated from high school at 17, didn't turn 18 till that following August right before I went to we started dating and he came on, he was very strong personality. I was dating someone else and he was like, "You're going to be my girlfriend." And I was like, "Okay, you're going to break up with him." And that took me a while to figure that out. But don't forget, I was 17.
Mhm.
I didn't know what I was doing. This whole dating thing was strange. We dated for quite some time, all through college. I got married. I was 22, 23 years old and realized soon that I really just married, not that it was anything he did wrong or I did wrong. It was just a sign of the times that you go to school and you get good grades and then you go to college and then you graduate and then you get a job and then you get proposed and you get married and then you have children. It was just on my list of things to do. Not that I really had a list, don't get me wrong, but in my head, in my heart, it was what I had learned as a young woman. He asked and we actually kind of told me to get married. He said, "Marry me." And he didn't say, "Will you marry me?" It was a very kind of, okay, I guess this is what I'm going to do. So I had a pink dress. I looked like Glinda the Good Witch. I don't know if anyone can relate to the Wizard of Oz, but if Glinda, as you notice, I have strawberry blonde hair and it's kind of, I looked Glinda the Good Witch with, if you can imagine me in a big pink puffy dress. I floated down in my little bubble, and I know I'm being sarcastic, but that's how I felt, like it was some sort of a fairy tale. In fact, I have a little saying in my house. It says, "Every once in a while, right in the middle of an ordinary life, love brings you a fairy tale." How's that for a motto? So we got married, and I soon realized I wasn't marrying a man. I married a family. I was not used to being in this big, large, all-encompassing family. My family was very small. My mother was an only child, and my father only had one brother. So I only had 4 cousins. Holidays were 6, 8 people, whereas at my new husband's or my boyfriend, fiance at the time when we were dating, it was customary to have at least 12, 16, 18, 30-ish or more people at family events. And it was exciting to me, but it was also overwhelming. But I thought, this is what family looks like. This is what I missed from this very small dual childhood with the intellectual, but the artistic upbringing. And it was very exciting and I don't know, challenging too. And then again, don't forget, I'm 20 something now, very young. So we got married and waited a few years to have children. But before I knew it, we were married 10 years and had 3 little children. And I was living in a rather large home, very large home. And it just felt a little bit surreal to me. I didn't make all my own decisions. They were made for me. Not that nobody put a gun to my head. I did not, there was no ball and chain. I went along with that path of least resistance, right? I was one to just go along, get along, to go along, to make do. And although I'm a very hard worker and always felt like I would be successful in anything I did, I also didn't like conflict and didn't want to make waves. Again, the show must go on, right? And be a trooper. So I always had to make the best of things emotionally as well as constructually, pragmatically. It felt this is what's expected me, so this is what I will do. And even if it feels uncomfortable or not like me, I'll make the best of it. So 20 years later, I started to grow into a new version of myself and started to find my voice. And after 20 years of teaching dance, the phone rang when I was in college, and it was my mother. And she said, would you be good enough to sub Penny's classes for her when she's out on maternity leave? And I'm 19 years old. And when your mother starts a sentence with, would you be good enough? And you say, no, you're not good enough, right? So I didn't really have the right or the option to say, I love you, I love this studio, but I don't want to be a dance teacher. I don't want to be a teacher. And as much as I'd love to help you out in the studio and Penny out, I'm in college, I'm committed to school, I have a commitment on the classes happen to be on Tuesday afternoon. She said, I said, Mom, I have classes on Tuesday. She said, see what you can do to change that. There was always this kind of gentle, subtle, I'm going to call it manipulation, but it was more of a covert, kind of grandiose, under the wave, not over the wave kind of feeling, underneath feeling of obligation. And if I said no, I would be rejected, alienated, persona non grata, as she would say. I didn't really have the confidence back then to say no. So I did it. And 20 years later, I was still there, not only teaching the classes, but pretty much co-directing the school, and grew a business that had about 150 students to over 1,000 with 3 locations. Well, they'd gone to 4 locations and settled into 2. But the point is, if I do something, I'm going to put my heart and soul into it. I don't do anything halfway. But now I'm in my 30s going, how did I get here? I'm married to this man that everything is, how did I get here? And I'm in this job of, how did I get here? And I love my children, loved them the minute, held them in my arms, and they're all adults now. But I also felt this feeling of kind of living some surreal, like I was watching a movie or a television show. It was almost like I was living someone else's reality or someone else's life. I don't know if anyone can relate to that, but it felt very decided for me. Like I allowed everyone else to make my decisions for me, because if they didn't work out, I wouldn't be to blame. It would be someone else's fault or responsibility. Instead of taking ownership or accountability for my own decisions, I just allowed people to make my decisions for me. And when I did speak up and voice my opinion or argue or discern, it was very soon either made fun of or squelched or brushed aside or gaslit, as we call it now. I don't think we used the term gaslit back in the 1980s or 90s, but it felt, I guess I made my bed, I've got to lie in it, right? So until finally a few events happened in the marriage and in the job, and I started to realize that I was just not comfortable. I felt very uncomfortable in my career, in my marriage, and I started to speak up about it, and it was not received well. So I thought, if I'm going to continue to speak my mind, this is going to cause a problem, or I'm going to have to keep pretending that everything is okay. So for many years, I just kept pretending. I was very good at it. Put the hair in a tiara, lipstick, and put on a little black dress and pretend everything was just fabulous, as long as the kids were happy and they were getting good grades. But you start to spiral in this world of feeling dead, like you're living a lie, like you're wearing a mask and you feel like it's a charade or some sort of facade. And it wasn't conscious. It didn't wake up in the morning and go, oh, I think I'm going to be fake today. Not at all. It was so slow and so like a drip, almost like the grains of an
Yeah.
hourglass,
Hey,
very
but
slow.
all right, tell me a little bit. Say, this is the stage that I'm really curious about because I do come across lives who are in a very similar slow burn, and they were put on the burner quite early. So it's even more difficult for them to first sense that something's off and when others could say it, but they wouldn't agree. Or, you know what I mean? That there could be others sensing that you're not voicing yourself, or you're not making your own decisions, or there's another life altogether which appears to be marching you to a particular direction, but one wouldn't agree because that's all that I've seen myself live into. How did you, as a life, grew aware about it to begin with, and then
Well,
onward?
yeah, it's a beautiful question. I'm recollecting. It was twofold. I believe some of it were the universe, God brought people into my life who flipped a mirror at me, not literally, but figuratively, showed me how I was so miserable. And the
Oh.
reflection I got back by asking me questions. Are you sure you're really loving this? You seem unhappy. What's going on? And I started to confide in a few friends, people that had come into my life. Some of them were students, some of them were parents of students, some of them were people that I had met. And I started to realize that, and I saw also parallels, not just in my life, but other people that I started to meet. And I realized, wow, I really am two separate people. The one that I have to be to survive,
Mm.
because if I don't survive, I will be alienated, estranged, insulted, disrespected, cut off, criticized. And I was, but to a small degree where I could be like, oh, yeah, you're right, and brush it aside. So if I, and people also, not only myself, but others I've seen, when you start to feel uncomfortable in your own skin, we start to behave in such a way to lessen the pain, whether that be shopping, alcohol, prescription medication, recreational drugs, dalliances, extramarital affairs. People just behave like in very dysfunctional ways, whether when they start to be really unhappy, anxiety, depression. And for me, it manifested in physical ailments. I was in constant pain. I got tinnitus. I got resorption in a tooth. I had to have nodules taken off my vocal cords. My tonsils came out. I had a dysfunctional eustachius tube between my ear and the occipital ridge, chronic headaches. I could go on with ailment after ailment. None of them were like going to kill me, but because they kept compounding and compounding, and I kept thinking, why am I? And everything was in the head, the eyes, the ears, the nose, and the throat. Like this entire region of my body was shut down. My ears, my jaw, I would grind my teeth. It was awful. And I felt as an incredible sense of tension from my, I would say, sternum up. And I would go to the doctor, and it was a few, usually chiropractors, complementary medical modalities of healing, acupuncture, Reiki, macrobiotics, Ayurveda, yoga. I tried everything. And I would be like, make the ringing in my ears go away. Or I have this feeling of anxiety and fear. And no matter what blood test they took, what skin graft they took, or what tests they ran, everything was fine. There were no medical markers that said I had clinical depression, anxiety, Meniere's disease, thyroid disease, cancer, high blood pressure. I had none of it. It was all just an internal sense of discomfort. So I changed my diet. You name it. I tried everything. And it wasn't until, because I'm a constant learner, that I delved into the world of understanding the mind body connection and doing my 200, 300, 500 hour yoga teacher training. I became a practitioner, and then a student, and then a teacher, and then a trainer. And I eventually started my own registered yoga school called Sacred Space Yoga School. And I learned about self study. And from that, I realized, of course, I'm giving you an evolution of
Yes.
10, 15 years here. I learned that I was truly not living my dharma. I was living a false sense of, again, not on purpose, of no fault of my parents. And they weren't like, let's see if we can't make Paulette live a false persona. But I did. And I was a chameleon. I learned to be what people needed from me. And I was so good at it. Honestly, I didn't even know I was doing it. I wasn't trying to be that way. It was a subconscious longing. But I would say 16 years ago now, maybe a little bit longer, I did so much study, exploration, probably closer to 20 now at this point. Once I had started practicing yoga, but really studying, because it's a big difference between practicing yoga as an asana and a pranayama, but really understanding it more as a science, Ayurveda, and of the sacred geometry of the body and energy of chakras and energies. So that all came about, and I realized, wow, through studying the yamas and the niyamas and reading the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads, and of course, reading the Bible and every spiritual text there is, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but let's just say quite a few. I had done so much studying of myself through self-study, or svadhyaya, as we say, right? That I realized, wow, Paulette, if you keep this up, and this isn't going to end well. I started to really feel this deep sense of depression and anxiety. I was anxious one minute, sad the next, and I realized I was going through the stages of grieving: shock and denial, sadness, melancholy, reminiscent, nostalgia of I wanted my old life back. And then negotiating and bargaining with myself, let alone others in my life, people that came into my life, my coworkers, peers, family, and friends. And then that sense of anger, which I like to call frustration, where you feel trapped and stuck. And eventually I surrendered and let go and got to a point of acceptance. If I don't change my life, it's not going to end well. I'm either going to live this false persona for the rest of my life and either go down a dark road of becoming dependent on drugs and alcohol, having life debilitating illnesses, going down a dark road of having detrimental relationships in my life, or I'm going to just cold turkey say, okay, the time is right. So I eventually quit my job after 20 years. I left the performing arts world. That did not go well with the family, but c'est la vie. And I filed for divorce, which was 6 years later. I didn't, one word of advice, don't quit your job and file for divorce in the same year. Don't do that. I have one client right now who's going through breast cancer survival, retiring, leaving her business, filing for divorce, and moving all at the same time.
Well,
She made those decisions prior to meeting me. So,
I
but in hindsight, one life-changing decision at a time with purpose. So,
Paulette,
yeah,
one more
yes.
bit of before we go on the divorce, because you said something very interesting that often is misinterpreted, even with people who have read a lot of spiritual texts, the definition of dharma. And I do feel completely in sync with the way that you refer to it, but I would love for you to elaborate, because quite often in the traditional Indian families or the upbringing, dharma is taken as duty. And the duty appears to be, okay, you do the tough thing, stay in the family kind of thing. To simplify the explanation, take the tougher route, make the difficult thing happen. But I also sense that dharma is to honor your truest quality and to let your own radiance through. What is your own calling? To honor that is dharma too. Sun, for example, gives heat, and that's the dharma of sun, to be lit up the way that it is. What did you mean? And am I getting it right? How could you elaborate on that? And then continue, please, with your story.
Yes, of course, Dharma is a fascinating topic. I studied with Rod Stryker at the Himalayan Institute, and of course, his teacher and his teacher's teacher, with the lineage there, both in India and in upstate New York and Homestead, Pennsylvania. So he wrote a book called The Four Desires, and it's Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. But back to Dharma. Dharma dharma is probably one of the most profound words I've learned. And one thing I've also learned about the language of Sanskrit is that one word has many meanings. In English, let's take the word joy or joy. We can use happy, bliss. There's a few words that mean joyful. But in Sanskrit, there's, probably 20, 30, 40 that mean joy, love, or bliss. And I'm by no means a Sanskrit scholar. Please correct me, and you would know more than I. Whereas the language is ancient and also interpreted differently, but it also has, because it's a vibrational language, right? Whereas English it's just like mantra, where you have the vibrations in the body when you speak the language. It isn't just the meaning or the connotation, the translation of the word, but is the energy behind the language. So back to dharma, of course, because it's got the two parts of dharma, but I learned it as, yes, duty, but I see it more as purpose, longing, calling, fulfillment, this sense of what is the reason you're here? Like, why were you born? What is your contribution to the world and to society as a whole? What is it that brings your innate born gifts, God-given gifts, to the world that makes you a unique contribution? Almost like your thumbprint, right? It's going to be the DNA of your soul, not the DNA of your blood or your skin, but your soul. If your soul had a DNA, I would see that as your dharma. Duty can be a part of that, sure, like your respect for culture and family and all those things, but that isn't the whole purpose of it, in my definition. And I am by no means the definer, but I do see it as that. Just as artha is the means that you have to fulfill your dharma. If you don't have artha, you can't fulfill dharma. And then kama is those things that along the way bring you joy and pleasure. That could be music or food or agriculture or architecture or theater or nature, animals, whatever you derive pleasure and joy from. And lastly, moksha is also that sense of being unencumbered and unburdened from the other three desires. How beautiful is it to feel like you don't have to worry about all those burdens of life, of fulfilling your purpose and making your means and finding joy in life, to just feel unburdened and unencumbered by all those. And as you go through life, those four different desires are, shall we say, I don't want to say a hierarchy, but right now, this one's more a priority. So as I learned, helping people also write their dharma code, which is a little bit like their theme song or their mission statement, a little bit of the DNA of their soul. So that was a incredibly profound journey that I took doing that deep dive through the four desires. It's a beautiful book. I highly recommend everyone read it. Rod Stryker is the author. Hi, Rod. He actually married my husband and I, so my second husband and I. That's how I define it and how I realized as I was going through this journey through my 30s and 40s that not only did I not fulfill my dharma, I didn't even know I had one. And I felt ripped off, like gypped. That's an American term, right? I just didn't understand and wasn't educated or made aware that without understanding why we tick and why we're here, that you can never truly be happy. And I believe that with all my heart and soul. And when I started to discover that, I did a lot of work, 10, 15, 20 years of work, and I'm still at it. I'm 61 now. So, this is a 40-year journey of that young woman going, sure, let's get married. Let's have babies. Sounds great. Okay, I'll teach a few ballet classes. What the heck? To going, what? And I think I told you when we spoke prior that there was a song that really changed my life. And it's not sung, it's spoken by a man named David Byrne and the band The Talking Heads, which is a British band. My father was half Irish, half English. And maybe he's not. Now I just don't know if he is or not. I think he was. But regardless, the band is called Talking Heads, and the song is called Once in a Lifetime. And in this song, David has this foreboding, ominous, deep, resonating male voice that kind of hits the vibration right about here. I don't know if it's the vagus nerve or somewhere in the diaphragm and his voice. And I'm going to butcher it, but he says something like, it's all about water. And he speaks at the beginning, but there's this one line where he says, this isn't my beautiful house. This isn't my beautiful wife. How did I get here? And when I heard him say that, he doesn't sing it, he says it. It's like a poem at the beginning of the song. I started to cry and I realized, yeah, how did I get here? And I was 40, 41, 42, and realized I had allowed everyone else to make my decisions for me. And I said, no more.
Wow.
No, I didn't know what my decisions were. I just knew that I now had to take ownership for the part that I had played in my life and take full responsibility for the mistakes I had made. And there have been many. We're all human. Get to the back of the line, everyone. If you want to join the human race, if you've made an error, we're all sinners. No one's perfect. It's okay. It's okay. It's actually not okay if you keep pretending that you're okay.
Yeah. Paulette, once again, the day that you said no more, or the days that got you to that, it's profoundly powerful what you shared, how this awareness with the help of friends and people who care, showing up the mirror and are you really happy? Those questions. And then, of course, the way that you describe the four desires is not something that I've heard before. It's really profoundly beautiful. And I'm really looking forward to picking up the book as well. Really profoundly important to listen to oneself, to figure oneself out,
Yes.
to draft one's own dharma, to arrive at that clarity. Because I do talk about alignment as an extremely critical piece as far as alignment, as far as fulfillment of life is concerned. This podcast itself is called Fulfillment Game. The idea of talking of fulfillment here and as a game is that we aren't playing the game of life for fulfillment. We are playing it for looking great, proving it to us or to others, accomplishments, or whatever it means to win on the game, which is not around our fulfillment. It's about something else. So the invitation of this conversation is actually to switch the game to actually fulfillment. What would fulfill you? And from that point of view, these four desires was really a beautiful conversation. And then came the stage when you said, no more. Say more about what did it take?
It took everything I was willing to risk. The outcome felt worth the risk. I had to make a decision. Either I could continue down this path of treading water and not living my greatest, best, fullest, authentic life. And I know the word authenticity can get overused, so I try to avoid that one. Or I could just be status quo and live. I felt like I was living at 60% level of fulfillment. And that's no way to live.
No. It's a
Yeah.
compromise. It is a compromise and a sell-off. There is so much that life is such a rare gift, and to live a life of compromise. And every day I come across people who actually some are letting their old jobs go because of circumstances or because the company fired them. And a few days down, I find them saying, oh, wow, what a gift, actually. This is where the doors opened. This is where I began to think, what is it that I'm called to do? What is it that my soul really wants? How is it that I'm called to express myself more completely? So
I could have taken the easy way out and stayed in the job, wore the mask, put on my lipstick. I was very successful at what I did.
yeah,
And because I was a junior and the studio's name was my name, it was really my mother's name. Don't forget, she
yeah,
opened the studio before I was born. But people started to see me as Paulette, and she started to resent that. And there was not a darn thing I could do about it. I didn't name me. Don't blame me. It could have named me Susan. Like, I had nothing to do with the name thing. And that's a whole nother 9-hour conversation of the dysfunction of my family's names. But so I was this legacy, right arm, shadow, a figure. And the students and the parents and the community really did start to see me as this person. And I kept saying, no, it's not me. It's a part of me. It would be a little portion. It's something I could do well. I almost kind of wished I was really bad at dancing, or had two left feet or no rhythm or couldn't choreograph. And I was like, it comes easy, I'll do it. Okay, whatever. But it's just because someone is good at something does not mean it's their calling or their dharma or their fulfillment. I think sometimes the things that you're rotten at, that don't come easy, that you have to work at, that you have to study and practice and dissect and like really demonstrate a skill instead of it just coming innately, is maybe perhaps more of a yearning, a longing than just that. Well, okay, that came easy. Should it be like brushing your teeth? Brushing your teeth is not your dharma. Is it something we have to do every day? I'd like to think it is, but 2 or 3 times if needed. But on the other hand, it isn't repetition of something or the dedication or the doing it that brings forth the joy and the deep fulfillment, right? That calling, that deep sense of fulfillment, again, for lack of a word, right? It's much more profound than that. Yeah. So then from there, what was it? I realized that either I would commit suicide, which is a rather deep topic, and I did contemplate it for a while. I thought, if this is it, I might as well end it all now. And I thought, it was a fleeting moment, lasted in me a day or two. And I thought, no, that's not the answer. That's not the answer. The answer is to make a change. And somebody, her name is Jackie, she said, if the pain you're in is greater than your fear of change, you'll make a change. If the pain you're in is less than your fear of change, you'll just stay stuck. And the pain I was in was so great. The psychological, mental, emotional, spiritual, dharmic pain I was so flat. I felt like life was gray. I wouldn't say I was in deep depression. I was never on a medication for depression, but I felt kind of vanilla, if we're going to use ice cream flavors. Nothing wrong with vanilla. Every ice cream flavor is based on vanilla. So I just felt bland, kind of blah. Like there was no pizzazz and excitement. And not every day needs to be like that. That's exhaustion. That's the opposite. And I started also to notice that I was living on adrenaline. I went to the doctor, and your adrenals are shot to hell. And I think that was a quote. I had high blood pressure and my cholesterol was high. I was eating very healthy, but it was all a sense of living on the live wire. I felt like I was like, zzz, like you could touch me. And I remember always like I would touch something and get an electric shock from it. I always felt like a raw live wire. I was always angry, upset, agitated. I drove fast, drank too much coffee, too much wine, drove 90 miles an hour, probably cursed a crazy person, lived on candy bars and soda, a very unhealthy standard American diet in my 20s and 30s. I would only really sit down to eat a meal on the weekends when we went out to dinner. Other time, I ate all my meals in the car, either to and from sports events with the kids, picking them up, dropping them off, driving here, doing this, getting that, running that errand. I constantly lived in a state of adrenaline. And I didn't fall asleep. I crashed. And I noticed my physical well-being. I was 20 pounds underweight. I was 5'8" and probably 118 pounds, which is very tiny. I'm probably closer to 150 now and much happier. And I'm also a lot older and I'm like, I don't want to be a size 0 anymore. My waist was like 23 inches. It was a tiny little thing. And I'm not a big woman now, but I look at pictures of myself and think, man, Paulette, you are so unhealthy. So it was a culmination of me, of the physical draining, the feeling of that void and emptiness. But it was like a light switch. I just said, no more. I can't do this anymore. I remember my grandmother telling me when she used to smoke cigarettes and she was in her 70s and she quit, as she would say, cold turkey. Now, I never smoked cigarettes. And I said to her, how did you quit? And she said, I woke up one day and said, That's it. I'm done. And I did the same thing. I maybe inherited it from her. Fortitude, courage, persistence, perseverance, patience, resiliency. It takes fortitude to say, I'm no longer going to live a life that is empty. Yeah.
And
It's
say,
not easy. Yeah.
and say you said, done. I'm done.
I'm done. I'm done. And I didn't walk around telling everyone that. This was an internal conversation I had with my own heart and soul and throat, and got the whole body just went. Whew. And I said to myself, okay, how do I do this with grace and wisdom and dignity? Didn't know it was possible. So I made a decision to slowly back out of the ballet studio. I gave my mother my 2 years notice, not 2 weeks, 2 years. Yes, I did say that notice, which seemed respectful. She thought it was a joke. She said, if you need to cut back a little, and I know because now I had a 1, 3, and 5-year-old, and I'm 34 years old and thinking, ugh, I'm exhausted, not only physically, but mentally. And I was like, okay, I think I need to cut back a little. But what did I do? I started teaching more because it was also painful to admit that I wasn't happy. So what do? Is you just keep the show must go on, right? Be a trooper. So slowly, finally, 2000, I said, and I finally left in 2002. And then I filed for divorce in 2008. So there was 6 years between leaving the business and the mother and I didn't leave her as a mother, but I left her as a boss, right? She saw it as a rejection. And there were so many things that I was not happy about. And that's a whole nother 5-hour conversation. But it was a decision I needed to make to remove myself from being Paulette Jr. and little Paulette and co-directing and basically running the business with her. I did a lot, let's just put it that way. So, and then then that void in my heart was there of, if I'm not that, then who am I? Again, don't forget David Barnes saying, how did I get here, right? And I'm like, I don't know, David. I don't know how I got here. And I kept listening to the song and tears would pour down my face. And then I started to realize that the marriage also felt like, how did I get here? And I loved him as a man, as a person, but the marriage just felt like we never went like this. It was never this congruent connection. It was an obligation. And I was really good at it. I just decorated the house, kept the house immaculate. The kids looked beautiful. They were always bathed in great sports and school and homework and babysitters, because of course I was driving back and forth to ballet. And finally, all of a sudden, I don't have to go to work anymore. And I had umbilical hernia surgery. And if that isn't a visual for you of cutting the cord, right? The umbilical hernia, because I had I had 3 children in 4 years. My abdominals never went back together. So my doctor said, you know what? You have an umbilical hernia. We're going to have to do surgery. And I went, what the hell is an umbilical hernia? I'd never heard of it before. I'd heard of a hernia, but it was when my belly button basically had not gotten back together and my intestines were poking through, and they had to go in there and sew it all back up together. And I had to sit on the couch for 6 weeks. And those 6 weeks were, don't bend over, don't pick up the children, don't vacuum, don't grocery shop, don't leave the house. And I sat on that couch and cried and thought, okay, I was just about to quit the studio, and that gave me the time to sit and realize I need to leave this job. And then I had 6 years of no teaching, no studio, and thought, what am I going to do now? I can't just be a wife and a mother, can I? Can I just be a wife and a mother? Is that acceptable to society? I don't know. I don't feel very productive. So I started to practice yoga. And I said, and the kids were older now. They were in school. They were 8, 10, and 12. There were no diapers. They were, get in the car, guys. Come on, we're going to go we got to go to whatever. And they'd be like, okay, mom. And off we go. There were no burping and feeding. It was busy, but they were independent little children by then. And they were very well behaved and very busy in school and sports. And so for 6 years, I just poured my heart and soul into the house, the kids, the marriage. And I thought, I'm going to fix it. I can fix anything. If it's broke, I can fix it. I'm a problem solver. I'm a doer. I can do it. And the more I tried to do that, the more sad I got. I just felt sadder and sadder. And I thought, this is just, yeah. And we just kept growing apart. And I thought, okay, so we did the couples counseling thing and therapy. That didn't work. And so, that we need to get into my marriage, but so when I finally realized, and that was a very difficult decision to make, and I didn't tell a soul, the therapist I was going to, I didn't even tell her. I just said, yeah. In fact, the funny thing is, I went to that therapist and she kept asking me questions about her life. And I'm thinking, wait, I'm paying a therapist and here I am being her therapist. This is crazy. People would always come to me for help and guidance and advice and resources and tools. And because I was known as a problem solver, I would do what I could to fix things. So I finally did. And I realized again that I married a family. And unfortunately, I went through an 8.5-year fully litigated divorce case that included a 12-day trial, the 4-year state appellant court process. And for about a decade, my life was monopolized by the legal judicial system. I learned everything, unfortunately, about the psychological, mental, emotional, physical, sexual, spiritual side of marriage and love and divorce through that, not only through my lens, but people that started to come to me, but also the judicial, legal, financial, residential, lending, insurance, taxes, co-parenting side. Not that I'm a judge or a lawyer, so don't misunderstand when I use those words, everyone, but there are two sides of this. It's like railroad tracks. On one side, you've got this bowl of emotions of wife, mother, or husband, father. This is not a gender conversation. And that identification of that role of nurturer or provider or whatever role you take, connector, fixer. And on the other hand, it's, wait, what? The house, the car, the furniture, the this, the that, the 401k, the pension, the checking, the savings, the life insurance, the who's going to pay for what and where are we going to live and how's this going to work? And I didn't look at the tax returns. I was in the dark. I didn't know, and it was okay with me. My job was to teach ballet and take care of kids and keep the house clean and entertain. And that was a big mistake I made. But what happened was, because of the careers I'd had, and I was also a birth doula and a lactation consultant, and I mentioned the yoga teacher trainer, and I got into macrobiotic cooking and Ayurvedic. I knew a lot of women, right? Ballet, modeling, babies, yoga, and all these women started to hear about my story. And eventually, I got letters and my doorbell rang and my phone rang. It was the infancy of social media. And I started to get a lot of inquiries, mostly about my well-being. Are you okay? Why is this taking so long? But it would always end up with, can you help me? And I'd be like, I don't think so. No, I can't. I can barely help myself. You want me to help you? But it kept happening time and time again. So I reached out to my attorney and he said, Paulette, you owe it to give back. I said, should I go to law school? He goes, you'd be one hell of a lawyer. You think like a judge, you act like a lawyer, but you feel like a therapist. And again, that's a statement not coming from me, but I was like, he goes, you have been an asset to this experience, to the firm. You've been a credible client. You always come prepared. If I give you, do this, you do it immediately. You show up prepared. You know what to say, what not to say, what to wear, what not to wear. You really owe it to give back. You have experienced what 99% of people never will. And I didn't know that. I thought everyone went to trial. What do you mean? 97% of divorce cases do not go to trial. I didn't know that. I thought everyone did. Silly me, naive, didn't know it. I'd heard about mediation and we tried the whole mediation thing, and that's another long conversation. But the mediator sent us a check back in the mail and said, good luck. So I was like, all right, I guess if the mediator's wishing me good luck, I better buckle up. So if it happened in divorce, we had it. So it was a 12-day trial. Of course, there's years of preparation to even get to trial, all the normal discovery, interrogatories, depositions, sua sponte order, subpoena of documents, hearings, pretrial conferences. We had a special master, guardian ad litem was asked for. You name it. If it exists, we had it. So I learned all these terms and like, why is this so convoluted? Why is this so complex? Most people don't have those experiences, thank goodness. Only 3% of cases go to trial, and only 1% of that 3 goes to the appeals court. So, because I'm a bit of that rarity, I was able to give people a really good overview of this is the normal course of events, this is not the normal course of events from my experience. And after having spent 8.5 years in the going in and out of court and witnessing the process, not only of myself, but other people in the courtroom, I started to notice what people did well and what people did not do well, success stories and failures.
Yeah, that's a curious thing. That's really wonderful to know. And as for the direction of conversation, Paulette, what is it? What are the mistakes that people seem to be making when they're getting into marriages? What is it that they fail to consider? And the second aspect could be, particularly in the light of the social media world, the young people's world, the future of marriage and the marriage that appears to be. What comes to you when you think about the things that one should think about as one is contemplating marriage?
When you're making the decision to get married, it is a decision that more people need to understand is a legal binding contract. It has a romantic notion as well. Don't mean to negate the romantic notion, but for the most part, you are engaging in a legal binding contract. And if you're not aware of that, don't get married. Yet, do your homework. I'm not saying never, but don't just jump into it. Go in prepared. Understand what you're signing up for, right? So if you need to have the difficult decisions and conversations with this person that you're engaging in, finances, children, how many, who's taking what role and responsibilities, who is working, are we both working? How are we delineating the cost of things? And be involved in the decisions, be involved in the finances, be involved in the child rearing, both husband and wife, both mother and father. Be involved in the money, be involved in the decisions, and be involved in the children. And if you cannot come to a resolution, seek help. You're going to need a neutral party, therapist, coach, counselor, discernment counselor, and God forbid in divorce, a mediator, someone that can really educate the parties about coming to a resolution. If we're talking about is bedtime 7 or 7:30, okay, maybe we need to not be so controlling, right? Who cares? We care, but no child has been damaged because one parent thinks bedtime is a half an hour difference. But if one parent says bedtime is 7 and the other's like midnight, this is where we start to get into different parenting styles, different philosophies. And it's usually because one parent or one spouse is extremely controlling and will not meet their partner in the middle. And if you're in a relationship with somebody that wants to be secretive or controlling, it doesn't get better. If it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck and it walks like a duck, it's yellow like a duck, it's a duck. And if you can live with a controlling partner, if you can live with a secretive partner and just kind of throw up your hands and acquiesce to their wishes, their family, their culture, their desires, know what you're giving up. Know what you're signing up for ahead of time. If you can't, then this may not be the relationship for you. If you feel that you're being lied to, there are things that are none of your business and you don't have a right to ask questions and you don't have a voice and you're going to be made fun of or disrespected and you don't feel valued and appreciated as a spouse or a partner or a co-parent, this could be a miserable relationship, right?
And what do you see the direction being when, particularly in the light of the technology, that younger people are coming in and living as more independent lives, more individualistic lives, more individual entertainment, practically brought up alone with mobile phones for entertainment?
It is a different world, right? I'm lucky that my children are just old enough that they're in their 30s now. So they didn't quite grow up in the world of, they knew life before internet. They didn't really get a cell phone till they were in their later teen years. They weren't 4 years old on a tablet, but and thank goodness they had already graduated after the COVID nightmare. So they didn't have to go through that. I remember my daughter saying to me, who's now 33, thank God we didn't go through COVID with you, Mom. We would have gotten crazy in the house with the school thing. Yeah, you and me both. And I was a teacher, but I didn't teach math and science, school. I taught chasse, pas de bourrée, glissade, pas de chat. So it's a little different, but
Yeah.
teaching is teaching. It is a different world, especially with dating and meeting people on the internet or through electronic devices versus
Yeah.
human interaction, whether that be at a coffee shop or a restaurant or just meeting through a family. Hey, I think you'd really like this girl or whatever that conversation. It does shade or color
Yeah.
people's thinking about what is the appropriate amount of time to get to know someone,
Mm.
right? I find that the younger generation is now not marrying so young, which in some ways is good because they're able to be their own person first. And they have a little bit more of a sense of confidence in their identification as a human, what makes them tick, what their dharma might be, what is their goals, aspirations, and core values, right? Whereas when you're in your teens and early 20s and there's a lot of pressure from family and society, you're like, okay, like I just did. I'm like, sure, okay, sounds good. I'll do it. And I had no idea who I was. I've never met a 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old that goes, oh, I'm fully in my own identification as a human. And even in your 30s, depending on the person, they might still need a little bit more of growth, exploration, identification, exploration of themselves before they now see themselves as a partner. But it also can lead to them being a little more stubborn and controlling,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I do see, unfortunately, people getting married for the wrong reasons. They're not looking for a partner. They're looking for a mate, lineage, someone to have children, someone to do the laundry, someone to take care of them, someone to be a provider. Those aren't really first things. We can take care of ourselves. We don't need somebody else. No, we do need a partner to have a child with, although adoption is a real thing. It's a double-edged sword. And I do feel when I see couples come to me looking for divorce advice, that the 30 somethings, they're married 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, and they have a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old. And they really did get married for the wrong reasons. And they're so different. They really, there's no, and not to say that there isn't any love there because they've had a child together, they've been married, but they're oil and water. They're just incredibly different people. But I've also seen people married 35 years where they're like that too.
Yeah. Wow.
It's a very individual thing. Unfortunately, technology has complicated or shadowed the innate human connection
Yeah.
of meeting someone on an energetic level where you're in a park, in a restaurant, at a party, at an event, or just at the grocery store or whatever. But
And
it's false of swiping right and left and the
yeah,
false personas we see on social media.
absolutely. And Paulette, what would you call partnership? A healthy partnership? You said people are not getting together for partnership, instead
Yeah.
getting different roles for people. So what is
It's a lack of shared congruent core values. If you look at the 230 core values in the world, some people say there's more, but I think it's been narrowed down to about 230. And I'm happy to email it to anyone that wants it. Just email me, Paulette at betterdivorceacademy.com. I'll send it to you. Shoot me an email on my website. If out of the 230, I usually say try to pick 25, and then which is not easy. And then out of the 25, try to pick 6 that really resonate with you. Maybe 10, right? But if you have one and your partner has one, and you do the exercise and they do the exercise, and your core values are nothing similar, there's no overlap whatsoever. That is called a very difficult partnership.
what matters basically? The value.
Yes, your core values, what really
What do you hold?
matters to
Yeah.
you,
What matters to you?
right? And there is no core value that's bad.
No.
Every one of those 230 words are fabulous. They start with acceptance, and the last one is wisdom. They're in alphabetical order, right? There's no, oh, that's a bad core value. No, but they're different and they're going to resonate with people different. Now, I do see some overlap. Let's say somebody picks something like nature and
Mm.
or connecting to whatever, and I'm making this up, and the other's outdoors or adventure and outdoors. Okay, they're not the same, but there's a bit of
Common.
but a little bit of a connection there where we could
Yeah.
work with that. But if somebody is adventure and outgoing and the other's like introspection and quietness, and I'm giving you a very stereotypical example. I could pull it up on my computer, but I don't have it in front of me. You really will see, wow,
Yeah.
this is a recipe, a prescription for failure. No, those two people could learn to work together to find maybe some core values that are more in alignment with who they are. So the problem lies with when the person doesn't really know their own core values and they're picking core values that they're picking just to make their partner happy. Oh, you have that? Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I'll have that. Oh, you like chocolate ice cream? Oh, so do I. When they're like, I don't really like chocolate ice cream. So you can't, if your core values are truly not your core values, you're pretending, which is what I did and didn't even know I was doing it. Again, it's most people don't go, I'm going to pretend I like chocolate ice cream. They just say, oh, yeah, let me try it. Oh, it's not bad. You've seen, how many times have we been out to dinner with somebody or it's a buffet and nobody puts the same exact food on their plate. But sometimes somebody has a big plate full of chicken and the other has a big plate full of fish. And it's okay, but it's just a buffet. But if you had to do that every single day and never honor and respect and have any overlap or congruent core values or likes, goals, aspirations, it can be difficult. So either they're picking what their partner, so the next time they go up to the buffet, like, oh, my partner picked fish, so I better have fish now. No, pick the chicken. If you like chicken, eat the chicken. So don't pick the food that somebody else likes because they picked it. You truly have to, not to be like fish, that's disgusting. There's a difference between honoring somebody and still being true to yourself. So either not really knowing what you want or picking something because somebody else did. That could be the most egregious example that you're setting yourself up for failure.
And when, say, one is approaching divorce or separation, what is it that sometimes people feel that they are most surprised about? Somebody ought to have told me about this when I was getting married, or thereabout.
It's a great question. And I wrote a PDF and happy to send it to everyone. It's about the 12 worst divorce mistakes people make. And it's number one. It's when they trust their spouse to do the right thing. Because here's a person that you fell in love with on whatever level, depending on how old you are and how mature you are, and you trusted and you shared your innermost fears and hopes and wishes and dreams and prayers and vulnerabilities. And it's somebody you put your trust in, your faith in, your hope in. And you spend, I don't know, a year, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years with this person, and you think you really know them. So you trust them and have faith in them. So you're naturally going to feel that you're going to trust your spouse to do the right thing. And what's the right thing? Being honest, being candid, being respectful, being kind and compassionate, telling the hard truth, but with compassion and grace and dignity and wisdom and success to a place of resolution, not, oh yeah, take that attitude. And you really do have to realize that because of the emotional and financial stress and attachment that most people have, unfortunately, to things that should not or do not matter to them, they feel entitled and they feel, I call it the 3 E's, lack of empathy, entitlement, and exploitation. And if you are noticing that your spouse or parent, co-parent, are displaying or exemplaring a lack of empathy, they really just don't care about anyone but what they want. 24, it's me. This is inconvenient. Don't inconvenience me. I got to go. I'll come and go as I wish. Don't bother me. Take care of it. Or the opposite. Where are you going? What are you doing? What are you wearing? I don't like that. You cut your hair? How come you cut your hair? Where I don't like your job. I like your family. You can't win. What do you want me to change my family? Gee, that's possible, right? You've set your partner up for failure because They can't change their family. Maybe they don't have to see them 24/7, but to say something like, I don't like your family is, oh, gee, they could say, I don't either. You could say, yeah, I know they're totally difficult, but I get what I get. It's a very difficult thing. But once you get into that place where you're experiencing or witnessing that lack of empathy, you're now also likely experiencing entitlement, where they start to feel like what's mine is mine. Don't tell me what I want or where I'm going or what I'm doing or this my way or the highway. They know that there are rules or guidelines, but they don't apply to them. And this is it's a very good litmus test, right? If you are not once or twice, sometimes we can all be stubborn. I really like vanilla ice cream. Okay, fine. You like vanilla ice cream, but that's not entitlement. That's just, having conviction. There's a difference between having conviction and an inner knowingness about what you love versus being entitled to have something. It's a step deeper and wider than just conviction. But when you notice the rules don't apply to them, watch out. You're in for trouble. And lastly is a sense of exploitation, where they use people and places and systems and labels and things and money and accoutrements to benefit them because they feel hollow inside. So it's the label that makes them feel better about themselves. And those are typically the most difficult people to be married to. Try to be careful to not get married to someone like that. If I was to say to you, not you personally, but anyone, is your spouse displaying a sense of lack of empathy where they don't really care? They don't really care about anyone. And do they exploit things and do they realize or display that there's a sense of entitlement? Now, they won't say I'm entitled. They won't use that word, but it's just, then that's a really good litmus test, a good indicator that this could be a difficult relationship, a difficult marriage, and no doubt about it, very difficult to divorce. It's possible, but not so easy. Yeah.
And when the divorce becomes, say, inevitable, that is at that stage, what is it that surprises people? Oh, I never thought about this.
Pretty much everything surprises people because it's not something we learn. I would love to travel the country and lecture every junior in high school for a 2-hour workshop in love and marriage and relationship and divorce. And I would teach them that marriage is a legal binding contract. So be careful. I would teach them about lack of empathy, entitlement, and exploitation. And I would teach them about the 4 things the courts care about. Legal and physical custody being 1, making and where they sleep, 2, child support, an equitable division of marital assets and debt, or in a community property state, community property 50-50 share, what the difference is between non-marital assets, premarital assets, and marital assets are, because we don't know what that means, because why would we? We're falling in love and I'm going to look like Glinda the Good Witch and everything is just going to be fabulous, right? And lastly, spousal support. Spousal support. So just not from an emotional point of view, but just what is it? Define it, understand it. Because these young people don't understand what they're getting involved in when they're getting into a relationship. They go to college, they fall in love, they get engaged, they get married, and they go, what? So when you unfortunately, the statistics are not good, and and I want to share with everyone, I'm not pro-divorce. I'm happily remarried, almost 9 years now. I believe in love and marriage. I do with my heart. It's not my ex-husband's fault that we got divorced. It's just we were young, made mistakes, and that's okay. I mean,
and we grow out of ourselves. We are practically growing out of every mold or definition of that who we were in the first half of our lives, and this could happen too.
The statistics are that 50%-ish, sometimes it's 42%, 51%, but around between 40 to 50% of first marriages all over the world at some point will end in divorce, even ones in very strict cultural religious backgrounds. I have many clients who are Muslim, Hindi, Catholic, Jewish, strict religious backgrounds. And that's another discussion,
that would be
that societal feeling But putting statistics just in the topic of mind and leaving apart societal and religious aspects and culture, that's not a great number. That's a
No.
lot of people, right?
Not
And then it doesn't get better with second and third marriages. Those statistics get higher. Percentages grow with a second marriage is more like 60%, and a third marriage is about 73% divorce rate. That's excruciatingly high. So whether it's you and your spouse or someone you're just dating or a friend of yours or a family member, a loved one, a parent even, a coworker, a neighbor, a friend, it is a part of life. And the more we educate ourselves about marriage, what it means to get married, those core congruent values that are so important that you share, looking at the future and say, do we really have a similar viewpoint of life, fulfillment, dharma, calling, longing, purpose? Or are you in the right field and I'm in the left field?
I get it. And Paulette, when you think about, particularly from cultural standpoint, the kind of distinction or the difference that, say, an Indian family would be, and there's a large Indian community which would follow this particular podcast as well. How do you see them differing, or what is nuanced about couples who are coming from, say, Indian or Pakistani and the Desi, quote unquote, mindset, and what appears to be going on there in those families as far as divorce is concerned?
I've had many clients, and I'm really proud to say I've saved many marriages. A lot of it is education and awareness about what is particularly important to the couple, just the two parties, without the extended family's overview, perception, and involvement in that decision. When the couple can acknowledge and respect both sides of the spouse's point of view, there's no finger pointing. What I tend to see is spouse A's parents are saying it's all their fault, and spouse B's parents are saying it's all their fault. Instead of really looking at it from this place of what did our children do to get themselves in a place where they're not getting along? Is it age? Is it maturity? Do they have any shared values besides being husband and wife and kids? I mean, because it can be tricky. The difficulty I see is the worry that the parties have that they will be persona non grata and disowned. I don't know. I don't want to put words in
family pressures and community.
Yes, incredible pressure. Yeah. That I have to stay married because my parents will never speak to me again, even though they're on the brink of a nervous breakdown and they're really just at their wits' end. A lot of financial abuse, verbal abuse, psychological abuse, mental abuse that the parents are not aware of because they do not see their child spouse acting badly. That spouse only acts poorly when they're behind closed doors, when it's in their own private domain or an intimate setting. And as soon as I say to one of the parties, are your parents aware or is your family aware that you are been in extreme pain? And some of it is even physical abuse. And didn't mean to say some of it is even, forget the word even. And they usually say no. And not always. And I said, it might be time to share that with them. You know? As a mother and as a parent, if any of my 3 children and 2 stepchildren came to me and said, I am in agony because of the following reasons, it would be inhumane of me to not care and acknowledge that experience and the reality of their own truth and speak to them about it and maybe even call out the partners and try to bring them together and not fix it because Paulette, she'll always try to go in and fix everything. Remember that? But and that has never happened so far, knock on wood, that all 5 of the children are well. But back to a parent. A parent, you never want your child to suffer.
No.
We want our children to take ownership and responsibility and understand risks for their behaviors. We can't just always swoop in and fix everything for them, or they'll never learn to be productive members of society. But it pains any parent, and also a in-law parent, because I care just about my son, wife, as I do my son. What do we call it? Your mother-in-law, right? So it's Granted, it's tricky. You don't want to ever have to take sides.
No.
Um, I care about the both parties well, that they both feel heard and seen and validated and loved unconditionally. The more that they honor each other's differences, but
Mm,
also do everything they can to keep growing hobbies and talents and skills that they have. Nobody's perfect, but we can always find something good that our spouse does. I find, though, that those marriages that are more arranged or not of their own doing, they can be very difficult if they feel pressured to rush into it, where they really don't have time to get to know their
mm.
partner. It can be challenging and it can be overcome, but it also leads to a lot more challenges.
And Paulette, as one is, say, thinking about coming out of a marriage or is actually preparing for a divorce, what is it that one does in a fashion that one is able to navigate that to as well? Because this, as who could be better to tell somebody about what does it take, what are the precautions to do, what is it that you can actually, what's possible. I remember you talking about divorce as a possibility, which can be beautiful rather than something very burdensome and horrible that one is confronting. So okay, something beautiful can come out of it, and it can.
Yeah, I did. It's a nice way to word it. It can be. I see a metamorphosis for so many couples where they come to a place of, wow, Paulette, we did not realize just how peaceful, amicable, comfortable this process could be when handled differently. It's nothing we ever wanted. It's not something we would wish on anyone. But when both parties get to that level of acceptance that
Mm,
the marriage really is broken or an irreconcilable difference, where they can divorce or separate or untangle the knot amicably with kindness and respect, they're able to co parent better than if they stayed married arguing. Children really struggle when they hear conflict and they feel conflict in their hearts. Children love both parents, even when parents divorce, and there's discontent between a mother or a father always loves both their children, all of their children. It's not, I love that one, but don't like that one. Yeah. Sometimes we pick favorites at a moment's notice with behavior when they're little kids. Why did you do that? But as a human being, all parents love their children and
mm,
all children really love parents and want their parents to be happy. So I do see ultimately that when the parents are able to acknowledge the breakdown of the marriage, take ownership and responsibility for the
mm,
part that they have played in the demise of the marriage and the relationship, they
mm,
then can start to create a new chapter for
mm,
both of them where the children thrive in household A and in household B, and they're able to spend time with each parent for their own unique sense. And both parties typically will thrive much better
mm.
than if they stayed together in conflict. Conflict is not healthy.
And you were talking about your health, particularly certain parts of the body which were giving you a lot of trouble. And as you began to transform your life, how did that transform?
The only thing that did not permanently go away is the tinnitus, or some people call it tinnitus. I
Mm,
still hear it mildly. I do have an occipital release that my chiropractors taught me to do, and I don't do headstands because it's too much
mm,
compression on C1, 2, and 3 in the neck. A little inversion here and there won't hurt you. I did aerial yoga hanging upside down from a piece of fabric, which decreases the compression in the spine, which is a lovely and feeling. And it also calms the sympathetic nervous system, shifts it into parasympathetic. So don't mean to get into this biological talk, but there are many things that I've learned over the last 20, 30 years to negate those negative things. I don't grind my teeth anymore. I don't have nodules on my vocal cords. I feel at ease. I don't get headaches anymore. I sleep like a baby. I've learned a lot of stress management, and it's a beautiful transformation. As soon as you let go of trying to hold on for dear life to something that was broken, it's liberating.
mm.
It's like moksha, right?
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow, that's a very beautiful turn to complete this conversation, Paulette, tell me if there is anything in particular that we haven't spoken about. Of course, this is a huge topic, the kind of
It is, I know.
but from the point of view of something that people do need to walk away with from this conversation, what do you think is most matters most?
No matter what's going on in your life, step back and look at it objectively without jumping into it and trying to fix it right away. I like to think of it as how you would feel when you go to the movie theater or if you're watching a television show. Learn to witness what's going on and learn to witness your emotions. Journal what you're feeling. Your feelings are real. Own them, name them, claim them, feel them. That's why they're called feelings, because you're supposed to feel them. Try not to analyze it and sweep it under the rug, but look back at it objectively and witness it, right? You're like, we use the word witness when somebody witnesses a crime. They didn't commit the crime, they just saw the crime, right? Or when you watch a TV show, you don't break through the glass screen and try to be one of the actors. You're just sitting there in your chair, in your sofa. Just witness it, acknowledge it. Be careful with your emotions, getting too engaged and, I don't know, obsessive, catastrophized, I like to call it, right? We can't be objective when we are wrapped up in the emotion of it at the moment. Emotions are fine and they're real. We've got to name it and claim it. But if you can notice, whoa, look back, and just when you see an argument, you don't have to be in it, just witness it. Conflict has a resolution. The work I do is called alternative dispute resolution. ADR is the acronym. Me as a mediator, because I founded Better Divorce Academy, authored #1 best-selling book, Better Divorce Blueprint, and I host the Better Divorce podcast for tools for people to learn these skills. Because of my own 8.5-year fully litigated journey, and also having been in a new marriage too, and worked with literally thousands of people, both in coaching situations of people going through trial and high conflict situations, but also in people who are amicable and can divorce swiftly, help them avoid court, save all unnecessary legal fees, keep their private life private, and divorce with dignity and success swiftly, so they don't get tied up into that 18 to 24 month time period and that $40,000 to $70,000 legal fee jungle. And that's a national average. Some could be less, some could be more. That's a huge burden to step into, the money, the time, and your entire life is now under a microscope. So really stepping back and looking at this objectively, journal what you're feeling, document everything. Whether you want to call it evidence or documentation, you might need it. So be actively engaged in your relationship, your marriage. Take a part in it. Don't just be a side, shall we say, a spectator, right? You want to be actively engaged in it. But on the other hand, don't react to everything. It's a balance, a feeling that you're aware, but you're also able to stay in control. Your emotions will take over. Work with an expert, whether that be a divorce coach. I do discernment counseling for couples, work with party A and then party B and then both parties. And we keep doing those cycles until the parties say, I think we understand where we are. I'm able to get them through that discernment counseling process. So whether they need coaching, whether they need discernment counseling, or they're done and they're really ready for private ADR mediation, I'm here to help.
Beautiful, Paula. This was really powerful. You, from what I sense, you make this journey of divorce and through one of the toughest patches in life as if a holistic journey of self-discovery and a little bit of healing too, because that's what your training has been as well. This is really brilliant. Thank you for that contribution.
You're welcome. Thank you for the honor and the recognition. I just follow my heart and my soul, and I look at a problem and I say, how can I help fix this? I wanted to be part of the solution and not part of the problem.
I can sense that. And this is a huge contribution, Paulette. Thanks for holding space for making this happen. This is rare. And thanks for sharing so powerfully, Paulette. There's something truly powerful in the way that you make this journey, which could be really difficult, manageable. And
I do
something,
my best. Yeah. Mhm.
thanks. Thank you so much. And for everybody listening, this is an invitation to pause and pay attention. Hope you've picked up something that would help you be somebody who honors your real self through relationships, through marriage, and whatever happens next. So until next time, take care, stay connected, and switch to the fulfillment game. Don't forget to like and follow for more such conversations.